guys, welcome back to my watercolor channel, and today I paint some juicy apples. The first thing that I do is to prepare some paint. So I use lemon yellow and then cadmium red, and I prepare a lot of paint. And then for the green bits I mix lemon yellow and some cobalt blue. As I work here with the wet to wet technique, I wet the apple first. So I use a very big brush and make sure that everything is covered, and then I use my medium-sized brush and add carefully the first layer onto the apple. I brush in the direction of the apple, so in a very round shape, and I make sure that I don't add too much of a paint because I want to add some shadows later on. And then here a little bit more of the lemon yellow, also in the shape of the apple. Then I use some rose madden, so I mix it with my orange that I prepared before. And I think with light brush strokes, and now you can see clearly that the brush strokes are really creating the round shape. My apple is still quite wet, and then brush strokes going upwards and downwards, but also a little bit to the sides, so it looks a bit like a crisscross. And you see there are some highlights as well, so not everything is covered in paint. And then I take more of the lemon yellow and some cobalt blue, and then I continue with a very light layer, adding painting the leaves of the apple. And again here I added a very light layer of paint. I haven't actually wetted the paper before for the part of the leaves, so I just spread the paint carefully. In this case it's quite important to have the drawing ready so you have more of an idea where the leaves are. And he added more of the cobalt blue, so I have a much darker green. And I continue with the leaves underneath the first apple. My apple has already dried out largely, but I'm still careful that the colors are not mixing together. Yeah, adding more of the reddish color, which I basically used for the apple as well, and adding some stem for the leaf. Then I decided to add more loose leaves which surround the second apple. And I pressed the brush firmly, and here added very strong layer of green where I added more of the indigo blue. So I really want to have a contrast here. I continue with the second apple and just add water. So I wait a little bit till the paper has dried and it's not mixing with the green color. Here I use more of a smaller brush because I have some leaves in the way. And I proceed the same way as I have with the first apple, so just adding basically first layer of orange, and then while the paper is still wet I add more of the rose madden, but I use really light brush strokes which are quite visible, and it's very important to guide them in the form of the apple to create some roundness so it doesn't look too flat, but the pigment strength is still quite light. Now that we have autumn time, it's actually so many different apples available, and I got the idea to paint it myself as well. I didn't add that many highlights there, so I thought I'd take off a little bit of the paint because I wanted to add more of a greenish color, the same way as I have done on the first apple. And I add here some burnt sienna, so it has a really nice darkish colors mixed a little bit with the green that I have used before. And I prepare a stronger green now as well, so I use again a lemon yellow, a cobalt blue, but quite a lot of it and very strong in pigment. And then I continue with the leaf. So now the first layer has dried and I wanted to create a very strong contrast. And then I spread the new color onto it, but make sure to leave some of the green, very light layer of green there. I use a middle-sized brush and then adding carefully. So there are some leaves at the front, and then adding a little bit more of a dark green on the sides. And I continue adding more of the leaves. Adding stronger colors. And then taking off a little bit of the paint so it looks like it has a bit more of a structure, but I will not add too many details to the leaves of the apple. However, adding still a bit more darker colors in here while the paint is still wet. Continue with the lower leaf and adding also some stronger colors and a little bit changing the form of the leaf. But I do not add too much of the green or darker green there, and some leaf to the covering my second apple. Here I also add a very light layer of green, which is not too strong, and adding more of this orange colored, which I have used for the first layer of the apple, so it's mixing together and gives this more of a brown green color. But here also adding a stronger green where the part of the leaf is a little bit of bending. And more of the dark green into the middle of the leaf, mixing more green together. And adding a bit more darkness, so it creates a stronger contrast. Then where I have more of a loose leaves going on, I also wanted to add more of a stronger colors, so a very strong green and having added more of the indigo blue. And then I continue with the apple because I wanted to add a second layer to make it much stronger. So I wet the apples again after they have dried and add more of the reddish colors, but I add a stronger rose madden, and I proceed the same way basically as I have done before. So just adding with light brush strokes, which are very round in direction and the same as the form of the apple goes. So having a strong red, especially towards the right side, where is the shadow of the apple. Looks much nicer, and now the roundness comes out a little bit stronger than having just the first layer. And it takes a little bit of a time as well. Here I add the same way, so basically was like downwards, upwards, and then to the sides, but still in the form of the apple. And while the paper is still wet, adding more and stronger pigments. Just adding with the top of the brush some more of the rose madden, and then I continue with the apple at the bottom. When you're unexperienced, you can add water to the first apple, and then when you're finished with it, you add more water to the paper at the second on the second apple, and then you add more of the paint as well, and then adding more darker rose madden, so stronger in pigment. Yes, here it's also that the paper has dried a little bit, and then there the bottom more of the colors, a little bit more in the zigzag, and adding more color to the apples, and the reflection is coming out easier. So I haven't added any additional color to the rose madden. It's just really rose madden itself, and it has a really nice tint of red. And then here I added of the burnt sienna and adding it to the stem of the apple as well. I mix some color for the shadow. So it took me a while, and I recommend as well to try it out on a different piece of paper. It's basically cobalt blue, some of the greenish colors that I have made before, and some of the rose madden. But then I make sure that it's reddish purpley, so it's more of the rose madden and then the bluish colors. And I added some shadows underneath the leaves on the first apple, or the apple at the top, so it has very hard edges. But then I wetted the paper a little bit at the bottom, and then added a light layer of this mixture, brown, basically brownish purple. Now more shadow underneath the second apple here as well, adding a little bit of stronger shadow and then a lighter shadow. And then adding here a little bit more color at the top, so now it's just like emphasizing. As here I was a bit too afraid that the shadow doesn't look too good, so I added more of the rose madden and give a stronger color to the part of the apple where the shadow is falling. And then here to the side, basically point of adding this shadows to emphasize the light on the left side. So although you can't really see much of any big leaves that could give the shadow onto the apple, but it's kind of like hanging on the trees, so there are more shadows. And then the shadow of the apple onto the other apple as well, emphasizing. So I had to wait that this area has dried. And then adding a third layer and just to add some shadows and emphasizing the form of the leaves on the light green leaf as well. So now as the paper is drying, you see that the shadowy area comes nicely out. Basically, I used the same colors as for the shadows as I used for the apple, but adding a bit more of the reddish colors and green color. Then I thought the left side looks empty and I wanted to really emphasize the highlight onto the apple, so I wetted the paper around the edges of the apple and add some of the rose madder, but it's a very light layer, and now you can see better the form of the apple as well. But that's basically it. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the painting, and bye.